Hey everyone, how are we doing? Today I'm going to discuss whether the Bible actually teaches child sacrifice or not. And you get this a lot, right? And you get it, and it's people brainlessly following people like Richard Dawkins, for example. He's one of the main proponents of this silly assertion. And the idea basically goes, it's like, well, the Bible is immoral, etc., etc. And one of the reasons for that is because the Bible affirms child sacrifice. And people then go back to the story of Abraham, where God asks Abraham to sacrifice his son, and the fact that Abraham was willing to do it. And they're like, look there, this religion is clearly insane. Now, one can understand the objection. So, for example, if you are reading the Bible for the first time, and here, this is something that actually a lot of Christians struggle with. If you are a normal, rational human being and you read that story for the first time, you should go like, what? This guy, is he crazy? Sacrifice his son. What the heck is going on here? It's completely mental. But then you got to study the thing, right? Is that what it's really teaching? Because in the end, he doesn't kill his son, right? In the end, he doesn't kill his son. So surely that must count for something. So what on earth is going on here? Does it really teach child sacrifice or not? And one of the first things you should notice is that Christianity is distinctly is not really categorized by its propensity for child sacrifice, right? In case you didn't notice, right? And the same thing with the Jewish nation, right? So if the Bible teaches child sacrifice, then you have to explain the distinct absence of child sacrifice in both Christian and Jewish history. I mean, come on, right? Or maybe we're just apostate. Maybe we're just not doing what the Bible tells us to. Who knows? Right. So what on earth is going on here? Now you got to get the context. Okay, so here's the context. Here's Abraham. He's 70 years old by this point when God approaches him. He's 70 years old when God first approaches him. First, not to sacrifice his son. When God first approaches him, the guy's already 70 years old. And the reason why God does that is because basically everyone on the planet by this point, the original religion that would have been carried over by Noah, because Noah was a worshipper of God, and by this point, the true religion, the faith in God, was completely corrupted. People were practicing syncretism, and the Bible talks about it, where Adam's upbringing and his society, Abraham's upbringing and his society and his parents, they're practicing syncretism. They worship false gods. They worship pagan gods, and all of which would have had a child and human sacrifice in it. This was normal for them, right? This was normal for them. So now God is seeing this particular situation. He's like, no, this can't carry on, because I want to, ultimately I want to save these people, and I want to give them chance to reconcile with me and all these sorts of things. So I'm going to call Abraham, because I see he's a good guy, right? He's in that situation. It's a bit of a rubbish situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull him out. I'm going to reintroduce myself to him, and through him I'm going to form a nation that is going to represent me. Resent me. I nearly said Freudian slip, maybe. Right, now a nation that's going to represent me. These people are going to be my representatives, and I'm going to design that they're going to then introduce me and talk about me to the rest of the world and be a blessing on other people. So basically the story of Abraham is God is basically setting up his store. He's setting up shop, right? This is who I am. And if Abraham is going to be the main patriarch, right, he's going to be the example. So God's going to have to set certain things up, right? So you basically, as you read, if you go, and it's in the book of Genesis, from Genesis 12 onwards, right? So Abraham goes for like the next 25 odd years, right? Doing what God tells him and experiencing what God is like, and basically getting the feel for who God was, right? And they would communicate and all these kinds of things and have all these experience. God was like, go to Egypt and do this and this and that, or go here and go there. And he wouldn't really obey, and he wouldn't really have faith, and then things would go horribly wrong, and God would pull him out of the problem and let me help you out and things like that. And so after quite a while, so by this point, right, so by the time it comes to God asking Abraham to sacrifice his son, Abraham is now known God for like 20 odd years, right? He's now got this lifelong experience, and in his mind, right? Because we have to ask, why would any sane person agree to sacrifice their child. And what we're doing is we are imposing our modern mentality onto the mentality of the people back then. If everyone and his dog was doing child sacrifice, which was exactly what the pagans were doing in those days, Abraham would have thought to himself, well, maybe this God is like the other gods. Maybe that's what he wants from me, And because I've seen his power, and because I've seen all the miracles that he's done for me in my life, then I should have faith and do what he tells me to. And so that's what his reasoning would have been like, right? He would have had no other frame of reference. Basically, his only frame of reference would have been what he had been raised with the pagan situations that he was raised with. And now in the face of this request, by a God that he communicated directly with and had this God perform all kinds of miracles. So he knew that this God was the real God, right? He even gave him a son, right? So Sarah was 90 years old, right? And the Bible says that the way of woman was no longer the case with. So she had hit menopause by this time. There was no way. She was like, no way. And God made a miracle, and they were able to have a child. And so he's like, man, God is God. When every time in the past when I've doubted God, when I have not listened to what he said, things went wrong for me. Right? So his only way of going based on everything that he had experienced, the only frame of reference that he ever had, right? He would have been like, hey, maybe this is what God wants. And now this is a huge shock value for anyone, especially today reading it. There's huge shock value there. My goodness, what on earth is going on? And this is the thing. That's done on purpose, right? It's like any good story. Shock value is inserted on purpose. It's meant to evoke certain emotions in you, right? It's expected. You're supposed to have those emotions. When you read it, you're supposed to be shocked and horrified, right? Now, here's the thing, right? With the stories in the Bible, you always have the actual story and you have the typological story, right? The meaning that is on top of that, right? So, in the story, you have a typology. What's the typology? What does this represent more than just the actual telling of an actual story? As Christians, we know, right, that God is trying to teach us something here through Abraham. Because remember, God is setting up he's setting up the details here. This is what I'm like. This is who I am, right? And I want you people to understand what I'm like. So as Christians, we know that God is a father. Right? We know God the Father. Not that he's actually a father, but that's the kind of relationship. He's trying to help us understand that kind of relationship, right? And we are his children. Okay, all right. So now it makes sense. Abraham is now in a situation where he's been asked to sacrifice his son. And that's meant to evoke these kinds of sentiments. So in this story, Abraham represents God, right? His son has to die. And that sucks, right? That's not cool, right? Now, who does Isaac represent? Most people think Isaac represents Jesus. No, that's not the case. That's not true. Isaac represents us, right? So here's the thing. We know that we are the sons and daughters of God. And here's the thing. We also know that we all deserve to die because of sin. So here's the situation. We get that feeling. Now, Abraham to his son is like, my son has to die. That sucks. And it's the same thing that God feels with in terms of us. Because of sin, sin is going to kill us. And God is looking at this and is like, that sucks. Right? That's the kind of emotion that is trying to get through. So now, here's another interesting thing. The first time that the word love is ever used in the Bible is in reference from Adam to his son. Right? Where God says to him, take your son, your only son, whom you love. This is the first time the word love is ever mentioned in the Bible. And this is for a reason. So not only is it the love for Abraham for his son, but typologically it's meant to express the first time ever is the love that God has for his people, for us. That's what it's trying to communicate. But now here's the situation. He's got to die. Man, this sucks. So Abraham, in his own reasoning and stuff like that, and we know that Abraham was so distraught that he didn't even tell his wife about it, right? Because he knew that she would probably convince him not to do it, right? And obviously, who wouldn't, right? This is insane, okay? So So Abraham was fully cognizant about how crazy this is, but he's like, and he's wrestling between his duty towards God and his love for his child. Is what can I do? So he goes for it. Now, here's another thing. Most people, when they go up in arms, say, "Oh, child sacrifice." Isaac was not a child. Okay, he was not a child. Now, when we study this subject, all of the ancient historians, so for example, people like Josephus or even our contemporary historians and scholars and stuff like that, put Isaac between the ages of about 18 to 30. So he's not a child. It's not like Abraham is dragging this 5-year-old to go and slit his throat. Come on, right? The fact of the matter, when you look at the language and it uses the boy, the child, and things like that, in the ancient Hebrew tradition, you are not really a man until you hit about the age of 30. Even though nowadays you get bar mitzvah, which is like a rite of passage, you're not fully a man until you hit and fully responsible and be referred to as a full-on man until you hit about the age of 30. And this makes sense. I mean, you see in the Bible, for example, Jesus, he didn't begin his ministry until he hit the age of 30. And there's a lot of people in the Bible where you see until they hit the age of 30, they didn't receive certain responsibilities. So we need to get that cultural context in there, right? So when he's talking about a boy, right, there's the word itself, the child, the boy, right? I'm 34 years old. I'm still my parents' child, right? So we need to be a little bit sensible about these things, right? So people put the age of Isaac between 18 to about 30 years old. So let's go with 20, right? He's 20. Now, if Isaac was 20 at this point, it means that Abraham would have been about 130 years old. Now, here's the thing, right? What person who's even 80 years old, right, would be able to drag a 20-year-old against their will to anything, right? Well, that's not going to happen, right? So what does this tell us? Come on, just if you think about it rationally, it means that Isaac was cooperative. He went willingly. Okay? Which tells, again, in a typological sense, it tells you something about what our attitude should be like. As Christians, we accept the fact that we should die because we acknowledge our sin, right? If we're sinful, you commit sin, the wages of sin is death. It's like, yeah, man, it sucks, but that's it, right? And we have faith in God, and, if he says that that's the case, sin will kill you. Sin will kill you. And you have to accept that, right? And this is basically what Isaac does. He accepts his fate. Because he's not only has faith in his father, he's obedient to his father, but he's got faith in God, right? And that's the kind of thing, that faith that God is attempting to say, this is the kind of faith I need from you guys. But there's obviously a danger in having that kind of faith, because if you have that kind of faith, and atheists rightly recognize this, is that kind of faith can lead people to atrocity. Yeah, absolutely. But this is exactly why God is doing this, because in the end, right, God says, no, don't do it. And he's setting up the thing. It's like, even though that faith is really, really good, it's fantastic. Well done for having that kind of faith. But I want you to know that no matter how much faith you had, I will never, ever ask for a human sacrifice. And that's what he's trying to say. So they get to the mountain, and Abraham, he takes the wood, and here's your other clue. He takes the wood for the sacrifice. Would have been a fair bit of wood, by the way, to climb up the mountain, and puts it, and he gets his son to carry it. There's your other clue, that we're not talking about like a 5-year-old here, for heaven's sake, right? That's your next clue. This was obviously a strapping young man who could throw a load of wood on his back and climb and hike up the mountain with his old man. He's not some child. He's a strapping young man, right? So if he had said, think about it, if it was you, right? You're going for your father to sacrifice you. You'd be like, hell no, I'm out of here, right? So if Isaac at any point had wanted to, he could have run out of there, and there's not a thing Abraham could have done about it, right? So, and Isaac is asking him, where's the sacrifice? Because now Isaac knows, and again, he's got some understanding. He's like, where's the sacrificial lamb? Right? I don't see it. So he knows what's going on. He catches on, right? And Abraham says, God will provide himself a sacrifice. And there's almost a bit of prophecy there, right? Because he doesn't know yet, really. But that's giving us a clue that the one who provides the sacrifice is not us, it's God that's going to provide it. It's God that's going to provide it. So they get up to the mountain, puts the wood down, gets Isaac. Isaac binds Isaac's hands. And there's another clue. Isaac is doing it willingly, because let me tell you, a guy who's 130, a guy who's a strapping young man who's 20 years old, right? If there was going to be a wrestling match, who's going to win, right? Isaac's obviously going to win. So the fact that Abraham bound his hands means that Isaac did it willingly. He did it willingly. And it's the same with us. We know that we're going to die. Sin is going to kill you. And are you a sinner? Yeah, man. I've done bad stuff in my life. Own it. I've done bad stuff in my life, and I deserve what's coming to me. Right? That is the only honest and right thing to do. It's like, if you've done something wrong, you own up. You own your bad, man. And it's the only way you grow. And so as Abraham's about to go, and what happens? The angel stops him. Abraham, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Why? Spare him. Spare him. He doesn't have to die. And that's exactly what the Christian story is, right? This is the gospel of Jesus Christ already in the Old Testament. Spare him. And who does Abraham stand for? Abraham represents God the Father. Isaac represents us. Right? He doesn't have to die. We don't have to die for our sins. God has made a way. There is a way out. There is a way out, right? So don't kill him, man. Stay your hand. I'm going to show you a different way. I'm going to show how I am different to all of the pagan gods and all of the pagan religions. This is the big difference. I require faith? Yeah. But no matter how much faith I require of you, I will never ask you to make the sacrifice. So who's the one that makes the sacrifice? God is the one that makes the sacrifice. He says, I am the one that's going to provide. And then we see something, right? Abraham looks around. Where's the sacrifice? He sees a ram caught in the thorn bush, right? In a thicket, they say. And the ram is caught by its horns. It's caught by its horns, it's gotten maybe tangled up in the horns. Now, what is the typology? What is the symbolism there, right? The ram, we know that Jesus is the lamb, right? And many people don't realize that the ram also represents Jesus. The lamb is Jesus at the beginning of his ministry, and the ram is Jesus at the end of his ministry. But here we have a ram caught by the horns. Now, in the Bible, in Bible symbolism and Bible imagery, the horn is a symbol of a king. Okay? So this ram is Christ the King. And the horns, the thing that represents his kingliness, is caught in a thorn bush. Was Christ given a crown of thorns? Yeah, he was. King of the Jews, crowned with a crown of thorns, and then sacrificed on our behalf. And so the ram represents Christ, who is our substitute. And God is like, I will never require you to sacrifice yourself or your children, because the one who will provide a sacrifice will be me. So if anyone comes to, and this is why there's no human or child sacrifice in Christianity, is because we know that the one who provides a sacrifice is not us. Why? Because we do not believe in works salvation. We can't do anything to earn our salvation. No matter how many people you sacrifice, you will never be saved, because we can do nothing in order to earn our salvation. So the only one who can provide it is God. And that's why there's no human sacrifice. That's why there's no child sacrifice in Christianity or in Judaism. That's why. Because the one that provides the sacrifice is God. The life to be sacrificed is Jesus Christ, who gives himself willingly as a substitute. So this has absolutely nothing. This is God setting up the standards. Like, I know other gods are bloodthirsty and they're constantly asking you to sacrifice your children and sacrifice your adults in order to appease them. But I'm different, right? I'm different in the sense where, in terms of the reconciliation, because in the pagan religions, You constantly have to please your God all the time. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice to try and appease your God all the time. And even today, it's the same thing with Islam, right? Constantly trying to please God. It's a works-based salvation, right? It's constantly this grind. What do I do? What do I sacrifice? What do I give up in order to earn the favor of the gods? And the Christian God is saying distinctly, it's like, it is not about what you do. It's about I do. I'm the one that pays the ultimate price in order to reconcile myself with you. I'm the one that does that, not you. All you have to do is accept it. That is all you have to do. And that's it. Right? And that's the story, man. And all that said, it makes you realize how stupid the objection is. How utterly ignorant people like Richard Dawkins are, where they think they understand the stories in the Bible, but they haven't the faintest clue. You can see that they're just interested in marking. They don't want to believe. They don't believe because they don't want to, right? And it's like, you know what? It's fine if you don't want to believe. That's fine, but don't go and talk rubbish, okay? This is what the story is talking about, because God is that is why God does that. He does it on purpose in order to create what we call in theology, what we call an object lesson. He's trying to show something. He's trying to set something up so that in future generations, if we ever be like, I wonder if I should sacrifice my children, right? We can go look and back in the Bible and say, no, that is not what our God wants. That's not, he's already made his own sacrifice, because Jesus Christ, who is King, who is Lord, right? He gave himself up. And that's an example for us, right? As Christians and everyone, right? The only authority that is legitimate is the kind of authority that is willing to sacrifice itself on behalf of the people that it has authority over. So in the Bible, when we're talking about authority, husbands, pastors, priests, presidents, anyone that has a position of authority, if you're not willing to give up your life, to sacrifice yourself for the people that are under your authority, then your authority is illegitimate. You are self-serving. That is the concept of authority in the Bible. It's self-sacrifice. I have authority because I'm the one that's going to look after. And if things that go wrong, I'm the one that pays the price. And that's exactly what happens, right? Things in the Garden of Eden went horribly wrong. And God's like, you know what? I'm the one in authority. The person who's in the ultimate authority, he gave up his own life in order to fix the situation, even though we were the ones that screwed up. That's authority. That's legitimate authority, and that's love. And there you have it. The idea that the Bible supports child sacrifice is one of the most absurd, most stupid accusations that could have ever been laid against Christianity. And it shows you the kind of ignorance and the kind of quality of people that make this kind of objection to the Bible. It's not true. There's no child sacrifice. And on the instances where we see child sacrifice is because it's being reported, not because it's being condoned. Because when God was setting up his people with the first patriarch, he made it very, very clear. This is not what I want. I despise people that make their children pass through the fire. I despise that. Don't do it. And that's why God sometimes sent Israel to destroy other nations, because they were committing child sacrifice. And God's like, I'm sick and tired of this. Go in there and wipe them out. And we would do the same thing today. Right? You have these people that sit on their little moral high horses and things like that. Oh, the Christians, this and that, right? But if you knew that there was someone somewhere in the Middle East or in China or wherever, and they were sacrificing children, right? For whatever reason, they were sacrificing children. You're telling me you wouldn't send the military in there to sort them out? Come on, right? And not only that, but the sheer hypocrisy, right? Where, child sacrifice. How many children are sacrificed today because people want to behave like a bunch of promiscuous freaks? Right? It's called abortion. 40 to 50 million children per year are killed in abortion. So in a space of 5 years, that is more lives lost, right, than the combined amount of people in both world wars. In every war of the 19th century. And it's carrying on. And it's just been accepted in Ireland. So don't come tell us, right? Take the moral high horse about child sacrifice when you've got abortion legalized left, right, and center, and you're killing 50 million children a year. Don't come to us with this garbage. And listen, Christians, you guys need to grow a spine and stop letting people tell you this rubbish, right? The fact that abortion has come, it was the West that led in abortion, is a disgrace. These are Christian countries. What's wrong with you people, right? It's because you're spineless and pathetic is why. You try to gain people's favor by constantly appeasing them and giving them what they want, or maybe they will accept God. Please, come on. That's not how it's going to happen. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Not child sacrifice. Thank you very much for your viewership. And I hope you stick around, subscribe, share if this was cool, if you enjoyed it. You know, as a rebuttal, go ahead, you know. But that's it. Thank you very much for your viewership. I know you probably have better things to do, but you chose to watch this. Thank you all. Cheerio and goodbye and God bless.